Volcanism is the phenomenon of eruption of molten rock, also known as magma, onto the surface of the earth, where lava, pyroclastics, and volcanic gases erupt through a break in the surface called a vent. Not all volcanoes are alike. There are three main types of volcanoes: composite, shield, and dome. Composite volcanoes, sometimes known as stratovolcanoes, are steep-sided cones formed from layers of ash and lava flows. The eruptions from these volcanoes may be pyroclastic flow rather than a flow of lava. Pyroclastic flow is a dense, destructive mass of very hot ash, lava fragments, and gases ejected explosively from a volcano. Shield volcanoes are broad, domed volcanoes with gently sloping sides. They usually erupt in a calmer but still deadly form, as it is made of lava flow. Dome volcanoes are, dome-shaped and have a cavity at the summit. The shape is a result from the slow extrusion of viscous lava from this type of volcano. Volcanoes are formed when magma from within the Earth's upper mantle works its way up to the surface. At the surface, it erupts to form lava flows and ash deposits. Over time, as the volcano continues to erupt, it will get bigger and bigger. There are two predominant types of volcanic eruptions. Effusive eruptions are when magma rises to the surface and flows out of the volcano as a viscous liquid called lava. In an explosive eruption, such as Mount St. Helens, magma was torn apart as it rose. When the magma reached the surface, it was in pieces, known as pyroclasts. Lava and magma are not the same thing. Lava is hot, molten, or semi-fluid rock erupted from a volcano or fissure, or solid rock resulting from cooling of this. Magma is hot fluid or semi-fluid material below the Earth's crust. Here you can see that the magma stays under the volcano, but when it comes up and flows over the mountain, it is called lava. Mount St. Helens is a great, if not the best example of a pyroclastic volcano. But before the infamous date of May 18, 1980, it was just a dormant volcano. Well, not exactly. 2 months before the eruption, the mountain had rumbled a bit, with earthquakes that read 4.2 on the scientists' seismographs. And once they saw this, volcanologists were sent to check the volcano out. So on May 18, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted, destroying the entire north face of the mountain. Trees were blown out of their stumps for 19 miles. The ice and snow on top of the mountain was instantly melting, overflowing rivers and streams. The ash and smoke pillar was so large, it blackened the skies for hundreds of miles away. And when it finally drifted back to Earth, it settled not only on Washington, but 7 neighboring states. Now this is a very extreme case of a volcanic eruption. Let's look at other volcanoes. El Chichón, a volcano in Mexico, is a dome volcano. If you speak Spanish, you know that Chichón means bump in English, and El Chichón resembled a bump, but people were wrong to underestimate its destructive power. From March 29th to April 4th of 1982, 3 large pyroclastic eruptions occurred, as explosive eruptions of high sulfur and hydride-bearing magma destroyed the summit lava dome and were accompanied by pyroclastic flows and surges that devastated an area extending about 8 kilometers around the volcano. Another volcano, Lascar, erupted on April 18, 2006, and was also a pyroclastic eruption that spewed ash more than 5 miles above the volcano. Each eruptive style is determined by these 3 different types of magma: basaltic, andesitic, and rhyolitic. Basaltic magma usually comes up from shield volcanoes. Andesitic and rhyolitic magmas usually come up from stratovolcanoes. A stratovolcano, or a composite volcano, is a volcano built up of alternate layers of lava and ash. These are the most dangerous types of volcanoes. For example, Mount St. Helens was a composite volcano, and as I stated before, it has caused a lot of damage. But because of this damage, scientists have found that sedimentary rocks can be formed in mere hours than what they thought to be millions of years. A rock, man, this always happens. A rock can fit into one of three categories: sedimentary, metamorphic, or igneous. Sedimentary rocks are formed from particles of sand, pebbles, and other fragments of material. Together, all these fragments are called sediment. Gradually, the sediment accumulates in layers, and over a long period of time, it hardens into rock. Sedimentary rock is fairly soft and can crumble easily. Conglomerate and limestone are both examples of sedimentary rocks. Metamorphic rocks, like gneiss and marble, are formed under the surface of the earth from the change that occurs due to intense heat and pressure. The rocks that result from these processes often have ribbon-like layers and may have shiny crystals formed by minerals growing slowly over time on their surface. Igneous rocks are formed when magma cools and hardens. Sometimes the magma cools inside the earth, and other times it erupts onto the surface from volcanoes. When lava cools very quickly, this does not allow crystals to form, and the rock looks shiny and has a glass-like surface, like obsidian. And sometimes gas bubbles are trapped in the rock during the cooling process, leaving tiny holes and cavities all around the rock, like basalt rocks. Weather and climate are not the same thing. They are two totally different things. Okay, maybe they're not so different, but they do not mean the same thing. Weather is defined by the state of the atmosphere at a place and time as regards to heat, dryness, sunshine, wind, rain, etc. Climate, on the other hand, is the weather conditions prevailing in an area in general or over a long period of time. So climate is weather that has just been recorded and averaged, and weather is just a current state of the atmosphere. Yakima, a city in Washington, had the plume of smoke and ash from Mount St. Helens suspended over them in the daytime, and the weather became a bit colder. But the ash monster eventually dissipated and had no lasting effects on the climate. That is because it did not contain high amounts of sulfur. High sulfur content in the pyroclastic volcanic explosion cools the atmosphere down for a few years. In fact, scientists want to do this artificially to fight global warming. The water cycle is God's gift to man. It makes water perfectly renewable and is the only reason why we still have water today. The water cycle is made of three main parts: evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. Evaporation is when the sun heats up water and turns it into water vapor or steam. Then it rises as a gas into the air. Condensation is when that water vapor in the air gets cold and changes back into liquid, forming clouds. Precipitation happens when so much water has condensed that the clouds cannot hold it anymore. Water falls back down to the earth in the form of rain, hail, sleet, or snow. It is then collected by lakes or rivers, and in very rare cases, it rains non-stop for 40 days and 40 nights, and the water is collected into what we know now as oceans. The earth is a wonderful place. Even though we have rainy days and giant scary clouds of ash floating over our heads once in a while, this helps us grow, learn, and understand. Until next time.